What they don't want is a foolish discussion between President Putin and President Trump on the basis of more promises for which there is no evidence we will ever keep, and surrender anything that the Russians have gained through this war. So I think the effort now is to sort of clean up the battlefield. There are still some pockets where Ukrainian forces, small numbers, drastically reduced in manpower, independent brigades, are being surrounded and then ultimately annihilated, or they're surrendering. I think they want to do that, and they're pressing towards Dnipro. And I think if you're sitting in the Russian General Staff, you're asking the question, where do we want to be by 21 January? And I think they want to be on the Dnieper River. I don't think they want to cross it, because clearly President Putin has made it abundantly clear to everyone that he doesn't want to rule Ukrainians under any circumstances. This is why the myth of the great Russian threat to Western Europe or Eastern Europe's nonsense. He doesn't want to do that. He's a great follower and admirer of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who always argued that Russia should divest itself of all these various states and peoples, non-Russians, and it should be a Slavic Russian state. Putin would like to do. So I see a big emphasis right now. Let's get to the Dnieper River, and then we can decide, based upon what President Trump and his representatives ultimately propose, whether or not we stay there or move further.
I hope
he can still cross that river into Odessa. There's nobody to stop him.
Douglas Macgregor has laid out a compelling vision of Russia's strategy in Ukraine, and it's far from what the mainstream media portrays. Let's dive deeper into his analysis, breaking down each key element to understand the stakes in this ongoing conflict and what it could mean for global power dynamics. Macgregor begins by highlighting Russia's efforts to clean up the battlefield. This phrase isn't about a general sweep. It's about systematically dismantling the remaining Ukrainian military forces. After nearly 2 years of fighting, Ukraine's manpower has been drastically reduced. What remains are small, isolated units, often cut off from supply lines and reinforcements. These units are not just fighting a losing battle, they're trapped in a war of attrition. Russia's focus is on encircling and neutralizing these pockets of resistance. Why? Because controlling the battlefield gives Russia leverage. Every surrendered brigade is a step toward consolidating power and solidifying gains. But Russia's strategy isn't simply about territory. It's about ensuring that when negotiations eventually take place, they do so on Russia's terms. The key to understanding this lies in the next phase of Russia's plan: positioning along the Dnipro River. The Dnipro River, running from Belarus to the Black Sea, is one of Ukraine's most significant geographic features. Controlling it would give Russia a natural defensive line. This is critical for several reasons. Rivers are natural barriers. For Ukraine to launch counteroffensives, they would have to cross the Dnipro, giving Russia a significant tactical advantage. Holding the east side of the Dnipro allows Russia to lock in its territorial gains without necessarily advancing further. This is about creating a facts-on-the-ground scenario, making it impossible for Ukraine to reclaim these areas without massive outside support. By stopping at the Dnipro, Russia signals to the world that its objectives are limited. It's not seeking to overrun all of Ukraine. Instead, it's about securing what it considers strategically vital areas. Macgregor emphasizes that Putin doesn't necessarily want to cross the Dnipro. This isn't about conquest for conquest's sake. It's about leverage. Putin's next moves will depend heavily on the political landscape, especially in Washington. To understand Putin's actions, Macgregor points to an important figure, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a renowned Russian thinker and dissident, believed that Russia should focus on being a strong, cohesive Slavic state. He argued that Russia's involvement with non-Russian territories diluted its strength and led to unnecessary conflicts. Putin appears to have embraced this philosophy. His goal isn't to rebuild the Soviet Union. Instead, he seeks to consolidate a strong Russian state, free from the burdens of ruling over non-Russian populations. This vision explains why Putin isn't interested in annexing all of Ukraine. It's not about creating a new empire. It's about securing Russia's future. This also debunks a common Western narrative that Russia poses a significant threat to Europe. Macgregor argues that this is a myth. Putin has no interest in ruling over Europe. His focus is on ensuring Russia's security and sovereignty. Trump's re-election changes the dynamics of the conflict. Macgregor highlights that Russia's next moves will depend on what Trump offers. The key question is whether Trump can deliver a deal that acknowledges Russia's gains and provides genuine security guarantees. However, there's skepticism. As Macgregor points out, the U.S. has a history of breaking promises to Russia. From NATO's eastward expansion to the withdrawal from arms control agreements, trust is in short supply. For any deal to work, it must include tangible concessions, not just empty rhetoric. Trump's challenge will be navigating the hawks in Washington. Figures like Marco Rubio are unlikely to support a deal that acknowledges Russia's victory. This means Trump will face significant opposition, even within his own party. Macgregor raises the possibility of Russia advancing to Odessa, a key port city on the Black Sea. Odessa's significance goes beyond geography. It's a vital economic hub. Controlling it would give Russia leverage over Ukraine's economy and trade routes. But taking Odessa would be a major escalation. It risks provoking a stronger response from NATO. Putin's decision will depend on whether he sees it as necessary for securing Russia's long-term interests. If Russia does move on Odessa, it would mark a significant shift in the conflict. It would also put the West in a difficult position. Supporting Ukraine's defense of Odessa would require a massive military commitment, one that many Western countries may be unwilling to make. Macgregor's analysis goes beyond the battlefield. He highlights the broader geopolitical stakes. This conflict isn't just about Ukraine. It's about the balance of power in Europe and the world. Russia's actions are a challenge to the US-led world order. By securing its interests in Ukraine, Russia is asserting its right to a sphere of influence. This challenges the West's narrative of a rules-based international order. At the same time, the conflict is draining Western resources. Billions of dollars have been spent supporting Ukraine. As the conflict drags on, public support in Western countries is waning. Macgregor suggests that this could lead to a shift in policy, especially if Trump pushes for negotiations. The next phase of the conflict will be critical. Russia's focus will be on consolidating its gains along the Dnipro. What happens next will depend on diplomacy. If Trump can offer a deal that recognizes Russia's gains and provides security guarantees, there's a chance for peace. However, if the West continues to push for total victory, the conflict will drag on. Macgregor warns that this would be a mistake. Russia is prepared to fight for as long as it takes to secure its interests. The question is whether the West is willing to do the same. Macgregor's insights offer a stark contrast to the mainstream narrative. His analysis reminds us that this conflict is not about ideology. It's about power, strategy, and national interests. As we move forward, understanding these dynamics will be crucial for anyone seeking to make sense of the world. According to Douglas Macgregor, what the Russians don't want is another empty negotiation between President Putin and President Trump, where the U.S. makes promises it has no intention of keeping. Russia has no interest in giving up the gains it has made through this war. The focus now is on cleaning up the battlefield, where a few isolated Ukrainian brigades, severely depleted in manpower, are being surrounded and either surrendering or facing annihilation. Russian forces are pressing towards Zaporizhia, and the question on the minds of Russian generals is clear. Where should we be by January 21st? The answer seems to be the Dnipro River. However, it's unlikely they plan to cross it. President Putin has consistently signaled that he has no desire to govern Ukrainians. This undercuts the narrative of a Russian threat to Europe. Putin follows the philosophy of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who believed Russia should rid itself of non-Russian territories and focus on being a Slavic state. This aligns with Putin's vision of a Russia that does not extend beyond its core ethnic boundaries. For now, the objective seems to be to consolidate gains at the Dnipro and assess Trump's proposals. Whether they stay put or push further, perhaps even to Odessa, will depend on the outcome of these negotiations. Strategically, there's little standing in their way should they decide to advance. Thanks for watching.